action!
Hi everyone, welcome back to Miss Nick's Math Lab. We have a special edition because today's lesson is brought to you by my awesome first hour class. Say hey class!
Hey!
Alright, so this homeroom of mine is going to help us practice our rounding skills. Now you might have already watched our video where we talked about different ways to write a number, different ways to read a number, and different values versus place values. So today we are focusing on the next step of that place value lesson, which is rounding those numbers. Now the reason we round numbers is to make our job easier. We round a big number like 7,969,802 to make it easier to work with, because I don't know about you, but if I'm doing math, if I'm adding, subtracting, multiplying, or dividing, I'd rather work with a number like 7,900,000 than 7,969,802, blah, blah, blah. So when we're rounding, that's going to help us when we need to estimate and do all sorts of math in the future. So this is a very important skill that I want you to follow all of the following steps to make sure you can ace it like we're going to. Now, in my class, we've learned a couple key steps to making sure that we are rounding correctly. And today, my homeroom class and I are going to help show you those steps so you can use them every time you are asked to round in class, on a test, or by your teacher. So our first step is to mark up our page because we need to be able to see what the question is asking us. So the first thing we always do is figure out what place value are they asking us to round to and what number are we rounding? Well, we're rounding 7,969,802, and we are rounding it to the thousands place. So the first thing you're always going to do, always do it, circle your number, underline the place that you are rounding to. The next step we're going to do is we're going to copy this number over so we can round it easier. So I'm just going to rewrite it on my page. 7,969,802. Now, the next step, we underlined the place that we're rounding to. We call that the rounding place. But we also want to identify it in our number. So we are going to circle our rounding place every time to make sure that we've identified that for ourselves, for our teacher who's grading it, and for anyone else we're trying to help do their work. So, class, I would like someone to raise their hand. What number should I be circling if I am rounding to the thousands place? Which number is going to be my rounding place?
The 9.
The 9. Which 9? My first 9 or my second 9? Because I got 2 of them. Chris?
First 9.
My first 9. What place value is it? Good catch. This is my second 9. That is my thousands. And if I want to make sure, I'm going to count backwards. Ones, tens, hundreds, thousands. So I am going to go ahead and circle that place value because that's the one we're using to round. So your second step is always circling the place value that you're rounding to, our rounding place. Now when we're rounding, we can't do it alone. We need the help of someone. The help of that person is our helper neighbor, the neighbor next door that's going to tell us, psst, hey, you got to round up, or psst, hey, you got to just leave it where it is. That is the neighbor to the right of the rounding place, always to the right. So we're always going to put an arrow above it so we remember who that helper is. So in this example, our helper is the 8. Our helper is the 8, and that helper helps us decide if we round up or if we let it rest. That place value that we're rounding to is the only number that's going to change. So now I want my class to help me out here because we have a special way of knowing if we are going to round our rounding place up or if we're going to let it stay where it's at. And we're going to write this down. So who can tell me, or I want my class to help me finish this actually. So if this neighbor helper right here is 4 or less, I'm going to write it over here. So if this neighbor helper is 4 or less, what do we do, class?
Let it rest.
Then we let it rest. That means we let our rounding place rest where it's at. So this would stay as a 9. Let it rest. 4 or less, let it rest. But if this number is 5 or more, what do we do?
Raise the score.
Raise the score. That means we bring up our rounding place by 1. So in this example, 5 or more, raise the score. Who can raise their hand and tell me, does our rounding place helper tell us to raise the score or let it rest? Yes, sir.
Raise the score.
Raise the score because our neighbor next door is 8. That's 5 or more, so we need to raise the score. So this 9 turns into what? What is the 9 going to turn into? Yes, sir.
A 0.
A 0, because the number after 9, if we bump it up by 1, is 10. So this 9 turns into a 0. The extra 1 for the 10 goes over to my next place value as if I was adding or something. And then everything in front of it comes straight down. So the 6 plus my extra 1 that I just added becomes a 7. The 9 stays the same. The 7 stays the same. And everything after our rounding place turns into what? What does it turn into? A 0. So everything after the rounding place, that place that we circled, turns into a 0. Now, our final answer would be 7,970,000. And that would be my answer rounded to the thousands place. Now, my major keys for this, when you are rounding, please make sure that you are circling your rounding place so that you don't forget which number you're rounding to, and that you're remembering that this neighbor helper is really just giving you advice. It's just whispering in your ear, telling you what to do, but this number doesn't actually change except to turn into a 0 at the end. So please use these steps to practice at home, practice rounding, have your parents write down random numbers, and then pick a place value and see if you can round it to that place value. Use that to practice, and as always, if you have any questions at all, please ask your math teacher. Good luck with rounding, and I will talk to you soon. Bye. Yay!